So let's move over to topic 2. Let's talk about some Pokemon games. Wow, what a diverse thing to talk about, I guess. Our other side of the bar there. So yeah, I was just thinking about it today and thinking about my history with the mainline Pokemon games. I know we've talked about it in the past. Rainbow was a guest on not too long ago where we talked about Pokemon games. Then I did a follow-up topic talking about the spin-off games that I forgot to mention. But kind of wanted to dive in a little bit more in depth with the mainline games, talk about my experience with them, what I liked, what I didn't like, maybe some Pokemon that I really enjoyed from each generation that they added, and just kind of talk about that for the second topic today. And the reason's kind of on my mind. We finished Scarlet and Violet not too long ago, but Lady's been really on the Pokemon train, so I've decided to hop on with her and kind of just enjoy this experience together, playing side by side and whatever. So she's been playing freaking, what is it called? It's not that one. It's not Brilliant Diamond. What's Pearl? Shining Pearl. She's been playing Shining Pearl since the holidays, and then just recently I've picked up Brilliant Diamond. So we were playing that together, and it's been a fun time. Once again, playing the game alongside of her, but it's been a little bit, I guess, different or an interesting playing experience. Playing through this generation for the first time. So I did not play through Diamond and Pearl when they were released on the DS. Oh boy, I don't know when, ages ago. I've played maybe 10, 15 minutes of a friend's copy, and I remember running into Bidoof, but that's about it. And Brilliant Diamond has been pretty fun so far. I do enjoy, the kind of callback to how the games used to play of, going to town, obviously doing the 8 badges. Not that that's changed a whole lot from the more recent titles, but the older mechanics of you running through the grass, your Pokemon encounters are random, and kind of a little bit more of a grind in order to level up, evolve, etc. your Pokemon, and that gameplay aspect. And I'm kind of a mixed bag about it, at least with this remake. And I'm not sure if it's just coming from the more recent titles, the opposite side of things, where Pokemon encounters are not random. It's literally a big open world. You can see them flying around, walking around, swimming, whatever it is, and you can kind of play in your encounters. And the other side of it, when you battle, while XP share is still a thing in both of these games, it felt a little bit more effective, I guess you could say, in the more recent titles, where it doesn't seem like it takes long at all for you to raise your team up or have the experience shared to other Pokemon, so they're growing, they're evolving, etc., etc. When tackling Diamond and Pearl, it's been the opposite side of the coin, where it feels more of like, this is going to take some time, and in ways it hasn't felt very compelling to play at times. It's more of like you get sidetracked from the main stuff. So it's been a mixed bag. I like the return to form of the journey from point to point across these towns with the rival, and then the big bad of the organization, and building up your team. But then for some reason it just feels limited compared to the newer stuff. So I don't know, take that with a grain of salt. So where did my Pokemon journey start officially? So Pokemon I was introduced to, I can't remember how, because there was it's been many years, so memories all kind of flood together and there's no exact timeline. But I remember it was the 3, just like everybody, the 3 big probably tackling points that I kind of got hit by, and kind of Pokemon consumed me. So there was the games. I did not play red version, blue version, yellow version until later, where I started playing yellow. Silver version was my first experience actually owning and playing a Pokemon game. Cousins and friends owned the other versions at the time, and my experience of the games, at least, were through them. Same with the N64 games of Stadium, Pokemon Snap, a little bit of that Pokemon like matching game or puzzle game, Puzzle League, that's what it's called. Never owned an N64. So yeah, Silver was my first personal experience with games, diving into that. So that was one facet. I was kind of introduced to it. Then there was the card trading game. I don't remember how I got involved in it, but I do remember my parents being very, kind to me in that aspect of like, we knew, or at least my dad knew, a local card shop. We would go there. We would get packs. I'm not sure if he knew it from his baseball trading card days or what, but we went there, got packs, and he humored me by playing the game with me when we did that with the little hit markers and trying to, like, okay, you need this many energy to do this attack, you need this card to do this to evolve, and all that. And those were fun times playing together with the card game, and obviously everybody was collecting them at that time. But I remember through the years, at least with the first generation of Pokemon and the second generation, like collecting a decent amount of the cards there, and having that aspect of Pokemon in my life. And then the third one was the anime, was the show, Fox Kids, every like Saturday morning or whatever it was. Enjoying the program there, going through the Kanto League, and then eventually the Johto League. It was another similar situation where it was mainly Gen 1 and 2 stuff that we watched those, and then leading into Pokemon the first movie, and then Pokemon 2000. I remember that was huge. I remember a lot of fond memories of that, eventually leading to, what was the third one called with Entei in it? Was it just Pokemon the third movie? I don't remember. But those were all great. A lot of fond memories of that, like the golden the Burger King like golden cards that you got in the Pokeballs. You got the Mew card for going to the movie. A lot of silly things, but those were the three aspects that kind of got me into it. And then yeah, from a game perspective, Pokemon Silver was my entry point. It must have been around the time Pokemon Silver was released, but we were moving. My aunt and uncle were nice enough to get me a Game Boy Advance, get me a copy of that, and that just consumed me. I really loved that game. I think that still stands as my favorite, if not top two, for generations, or for the generations of Pokemon. Playing that, couldn't decide for the life of me which starter I wanted, whether it was Cyndaquil, whether it was Totodile. Kind of went back and forth between those two and restarted that game many, many times. I just remember diving into it, loving all the Pokemon that I was running into, figuring out the different puzzles and aspects, whether it was the unknown puzzles and going and figure out like to make the Aerodactyl or the Kabuto in the tile puzzles, or finding the different siblings during the week, like Sunday is in this location and they give you this thing, or running into the legendary dogs and they're running around the map randomly and you got to kind of time it to when you pinpoint the same location with them so you can attempt to catch them. And then getting to the Elite Four, I remember for the longest time I was struggling with the Elite Four. And I had a friend on the bus who was nice enough to beat it for me. And I felt so bad. I was like, I didn't do it. So I restarted. And eventually, I finally beat it. I remember Kadabra being a huge one for me to get past that. And then probably the best thing from Gen 2 that I loved, and for some reason they haven't brought back, but after you complete the Elite Four and you become Pokemon League champion or whatever the hell, in the Johto League, you would then go to the Kanto region, just like the first games of Red, Blue, and Yellow version, and you would go through the Kanto version, and the map was exactly the same, and You would fight all the gym leaders there and like go through like this new game plus essentially and tackle it. And it was just a blast going through that again, experiencing from my perspective that for the first time, finding more Pokemon and just getting tougher and tougher and tougher challenges along the way. Just an amazing experience overall. So Silver was my first hands-on game with that. Then I did play Yellow. I did acquire a copy of that and played that for a while, and had some friends in the neighborhood who had some old strategy guides, so they were getting rid of those, and I kind of consumed those and the information there. It's weird how like some of that information is stuck where like, oh, what level does this Pokemon level at? Oh, it's this, and like how that pattern has kind of stuck around in future Pokemon iterations and generations as it's gone on. I think I still have that Yellow version strategy guide over on the bookshelf right now, from that game. Just crazy. Diving into those, finding out all the secrets or people you need to talk to and whatever. So yeah, played Yellow version. That was a blast, just because it also had the ties to, the show with Pikachu following you around and fighting Jesse and James from Team Rocket. Fun time there. And then I talked about Silver version, if not being my favorite, being my second. And it comes in a tough competition with this next one, which was Gen 3, which was Ruby and Sapphire. Now, I played Ruby. I think this might have been one of the first games that I put, at least in a single save, 100 plus hours into. Ruby was awesome. Playing that with my friends growing up, just like this was the first Game Boy Advance Pokemon game that they had. The other one's just being on Game Boy Color, but you could obviously pop it in the Advance. The graphics looked amazing at the time, very bright, very colorful. And just like any of these games prior to, the age of the internet, just running into Pokemon willy-nilly and like everything's new, everything's fresh, and learning what new evolutions different Pokemon have was great. That was another one that I had a tougher choice picking a starter, but I think I ultimately went with Mudkip. He was the homie, and blasting through that game. I remember in that one they introduced like little secret bases that you could have, so you could go into either a bush or a tree or a cave in the wall, and they would have different layouts of like the ground in there, and you could decorate it with different rugs or plushies or music notes where if you stepped on the pad it would make a little chime, and it was just something stupid that you could decorate. I don't think there was any multiplayer mechanic to that, at least in that time, because online capabilities weren't that great, and the link cables always sucked. So that was always fun. I always remember picking the same like hedge or bush just because it had like a very basic layout of ground, where some of them had random holes in it, and it was like, this is dumb, I can't decorate this well, but always went to that one and did that. And I had the Safari Zone in there. I think something that was really cool as well that they added in Gen 3. So surfing they've had since the first gen. Excuse me. And maybe Gen 2 they added Waterfall. That might have been this gen as well. But the bigger thing that they added with the HMs, the hidden moves that you could only teach, well, you could teach them infinite amount of times, but it would determine you could do things in the outside world. They added dive into this one. So there was a whole section of the game where you're like on the sea floor and you have to navigate around. And one of the towns you couldn't get to unless you dove down and then like emerged in its like volcano or like mountain range. Just really cool. I remember that taking me forever to try and figure out and find. But that was neat. So yeah, Gen 3 was another one that really hooked me. And then at the time, prior to Gen 4 coming out, they made a remaster or a re-release. Well, I guess it was a remake. Or like from the ground up, they remade Red and Blue with Fire Red and Leaf Green. And I think think I had red. I don't remember. Maybe I had green. I don't know. Had one of those. But that was another one that was just a blast, just because, once again, vibrant in all its color and the remake and things that they did add to it, because it was essentially the same game, but they added kind of like quality of life things from Gen 2 to Gen 3 kind of into this. I think you could run now into that game like you could in Gen 3, and maybe some other stuff that they had added. Just fun, just like another experience of it with the higher fidelity and graphics and whatnot. But after that one, that's where I kind of fell off. I had played a little bit of the Mystery Dungeon series, enjoyed that for what it was. But in terms of the mainline Pokemon games, I was out for a little while. It wasn't that I didn't enjoy Pokemon or anything like that. It just felt like maybe I had grown out of that phase and it wasn't something that I had wanted to play over and over again. So didn't get a DS, so skipped to Gen 4, so Diamond and Pearl. Same with Black and White and Black 2, White 2. It wasn't until X and Y that I dove back in. I think that was on the 3DS at the time. And man, talk about a resurgence for Pokemon in my life. That was like weird, where like I had a decent group of friends that all just decided, yo, this is the game we're playing. This is we're hopping back in on this. And it was fun playing that with everybody, talking through that experience again, reminiscing on the old ones, seeing the new mechanics, how they worked in this gen that they introduced. Now, granted, talking about it now, I don't remember a lot of X and Y story or what they particularly added to that game. I just do remember, once again, it was like in those circles, that friend group, like it just was this big bonding moment for everybody that we were all diving back into it, playing it and enjoying it. So in terms of that, I will hold it in a higher light or a fonder memory of like, yeah, that was a good game. It might be one that I have to go back to and be like, oh yeah, that wasn't great or whatever it was. But for that moment alone, or that experience alone, that was nice to get me back into it. So with this, or after that resurgence, I did decide to go back and play some of the DS titles. My buddy Kevin at the time was moving, decided he didn't want his DS anymore, so he kind of gave it to me, and he happened to have, I believe, Black. So I played that. It was another one I enjoyed. I don't remember if I didn't dive fully into it or whatever, but it enticed me enough to get either Black 2 or White 2. And that one was really good from a story perspective. It's another one where I have a hazy memory of what actually happened, or what partook in the story. Is that even a word? Partakes? Who knows? Whatever happened in that story. But I remember that one was like something clicked where it was like, this is really good, especially from a Pokemon game. Like something's going on here, where it was still your standard, like get your 8 badges, go to the Pokemon League, but there was some other story they were telling on top of it with some individual that you would run into and how you're trying to help them. And I remember that being really, really good. I'm sorry I can't remember more details about it, but that was a lot of fun. And then what was it, Sword and Shield that came after that? I think it was, because that was one of the first ones that I think that was the gen that Lady and I jumped into, was Sword and Shield for the first time. And that was another one where, you know, it was that experience of playing the games side by side with someone. So let's see. As I pull up the core series, thanks to Bulba Garden, that's a new one. Let's see. Okay, so you got Red, Blue, you got Silver, Gold, Ruby, Sapphire, Gen 4's Diamond, Pearl, you got Black, White, Black 2, White 2, X and Y. You had a remaster of Gen 3 with Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Oh, I skipped a gen. Sun and Moon. Sun and Moon came out in 3DS. This one I didn't connect with. I'm not sure if I didn't give it a fair shake or anything like that. they kind of changed what they were doing. You still had the gym battles and stuff of that nature, but I feel like I don't remember how they phrased it, because it was like gym battles, but you didn't have gym battles, or Island Challenge. Let's see. Island Challenge is a new mechanic introduced in Sun and Moon. It is a rite in which the players travel through the 4 islands of Alola. The goal: become the strongest trainer, known as the champion. Blah blah blah. In order to become the complete the island challenge, players must overcome each island's unique trials, which may include but are not limited to finding items, completing tests of knowledge, and battling with Pokemon. At the end of each trial, a player will battle a totem Pokemon. It's larger than a species normally is and special aura. Okay. Alright, well, with that, for some reason Sun and Moon didn't click with me. Maybe, once again, just has to be one of those ones that I go back to and give a try. And I think that's also when they started adding regional Pokemon. So you had the Alolan versions of stuff. So that just made it a whole nother layer of like, oh, okay, we can't think of new ones. We're just going to throw in the same ones as different varieties. And don't get me wrong, some of them did turn out very, very cool, like Vulpix's Alolan form being the ice and the fairy was great. Sandslash is a little weaker on the other side. It doesn't look like they added very much, unless that's version exclusive in general. But that went on a whole rabbit hole as the generations went on. So Sun and Moon came out, and then the Let's Go series. Let's Go Eevee, I tried once Lady and I were together. And I'll be honest, when I first tried it, not my cup of tea. I hated it. I've never been a Pokemon goer. Is that what they call them?
I don't know.
A Pokemon Go fan. I know that kind of swept the nation. Everybody was playing that on their mobile devices.
A goer or a grower?
Oh, geez. But yeah, I wasn't a big fan of just like, okay, you're just going out and you're catching them. And it was essentially a remake of Gen 1, which I was excited for, but it was mainly all catching. You would fight, you would still battle, but you only battle like trainers, gym leaders, and Team Rocket. There was no, you encounter Pokemon in the grass, you fight them with the Pokemon you have. It was, you got all of your experience and everything through catching Pokemon. So if you caught a Pokemon, it gets you X amount of experience, and that would be shared amongst the group. And when I first tried it, no, I wasn't about it. I have come back to it since, and I did enjoy that aspect, just maybe from a more chill perspective of like, yeah, I'm just out here catching stuff. And I think a later game that does pop up after playing that one and going back to it was like, okay, I was a little bit more open to that game mode compared to the way of the old and just battling everything. So I alluded to it earlier, Sword and Shield was after this. That was another great one. This one, playing with Lady side by side, once again sharing that experience together. Going through the story was good, and the DLC especially. This was like, as far as I know, the first game to have Pokemon DLC. The Isle of Armor and the Crown Tundra, both fantastic. I think Armor personally was a little bit more fun, in my opinion. Crown Tundra afterwards added just all the legendaries and the raid battles, which could be fun. But Isle of Armor, with its side story with Cub Fu and going and kind of building the Pokemon's confidence up, and then, you know, him evolving into the bigger bear Kung Fu fighter, I don't know, was fun. And then you had the different Alolan versions, which you could get if you found hidden Diglets that were around the island. So it was another way to get those those region exclusive Pokemon back into the game where they hadn't been before because they were only in Sun and Moon. And then, yes, as Lady alludes to in chat, the Grookman gang. Grookey was the best. And I talked about starters earlier, but when I had played the games prior, only the fire and the water starters really had, intrigued me until Sun and Moon, where Rowlet kind of was my first grass start I picked. But Grookman was the one that kind of stole it, and just, there was no other option, at least in that game. Who was Grookman even with? I don't even remember.
I don't remember, 'cause it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, because the other two didn't get picked. Let's see.
Score Bunny.
Score Bunny. Was it Sobble in that one?
I think.
It was Sobble in that one? Okay.
I think.
Yeah, so Score Bunny was cool.
Score
Well,
Bunny's cute.
he was fine. Sobble was... get him out.
Grookey, though.
Yeah, Grookey was the man there. So, Sword and Shield was great. And then we got a little bit of a curveball with Legends Arceus. Now, I know you could probably argue, is this a mainline Pokemon game or is it not? I'm going to say it is. And Arceus kind of took everything we knew from the mainline games and just flipped it. And instead of being current day, they threw you back into, not caveman times, but the olden days when people are very new on Pokemon and not really partnering with them, and they're not sure what's going on, so it's very research heavy. And even some individuals, which you'll talk to in the towns and stuff, are intimidated by Pokemon, which I get it. It's a wild animal. And it's your helping of the discovery factor. So it's another game where catching Pokemon is huge. However, they took that mechanic from Let's Go and they combined it with the Pokemon of old where they're still battling. So you still fight wild Pokemon, you still fight some trainers here and there who are also doing their research, but you are able to catch Pokemon without ever entering into these interactions, these fights with them. So you could sneak up on them, or maybe even if you're just running away, if you hit them with a ball of mud to distract them for a little bit, then you can chuck a ball at them. And it was this collection aspect because it's research that you're doing. And it was enticing compared to a Let's Go Eevee where it's just experience based. You would still get experience, but in this one it was enticing that you were doing these research tasks in your Pokedex. So in all the other games, you catch a Pokemon, it gets you a Pokedex entry, of just like a little blurb of what they are. In this one, you would still get the blurb, but because you're still researching these Pokemon, you want to try and complete these tasks to help your research friends, professor friends, in accomplishing what they want to do. And through doing this, you could eventually unlock more regions to go and explore even more areas. So some of them are very simple. Collect so many types of this Pokemon, catch some of them unaware. If they had different varieties, if they were male or female, capturing both of them. And if you were a shiny collector, this would add to your odds of finding shiny Pokemon if you happen to complete these tasks. And shiny hunting is a whole nother level and layer of these games on top of it. I've never been a shiny hunter, but it seems like it can be fun and can be very frustrating. I do remember them adding shinies in Gen 2 with Red Gyarados, but it's kind of exploded since that point. So Legends Arceus was a fun one. It's one I haven't beaten, but I did enjoy that when I finally did give that a try, and that was the title that made me enjoy Let's Go Eevee a little bit more when I went back to it. And then last but not least was Scarlet and Violet. These ones, while having their problems at launch, these games definitely kind of turned things on its head and progressed Pokemon forward in terms of storytelling that the other ones had not done before. All the other titles, well, most of the other titles were the generic, do your 8 gym badges, go to the Elite Four, become Pokemon League champion. Scarlet and Violet still have that. However, they had these other stories with other characters that you would kind of help them progress their stories or take down an evil organization or help a wounded Pokemon or discover where this legendary Pokemon has come from. And it was really, really cool. And they dealt with some dark stuff, as we talked about with Nick and Kayla when they were on the show. So you can check that out in more detail. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. Them adding on top of what Sword and Shield did with their big wild areas, where everything was that open world aspect of you could see the Pokemon just out in nature, and adding the capture mechanic to all of them there. While once again, it didn't make everything run super great due to the Switch's capabilities, or maybe the game's, I don't know. It was a fun experience overall. Another one fun to experience with Lady and other friends who were playing it at the same time. And we're looking forward to more. Hopefully this also has DLC, which I think they've confirmed. And we'll have to see what they add down the line. I will say some things that haven't clicked with me in terms of these later Pokemon games. Starting with X and Y has been like, the region Pokemon is fine, is cute that they add these varieties, but it's a little frustrating when they're not readily available, I guess, to the player. And I guess I get the argument, like, you're not in the region, why would they show up? That's a little I guess sad at times when you don't run into them again and see that variety. Sun and Moon, probably one of the versions I'm lacking on the most. I know barely any of the Pokedex entries for them, but I'd like to go back and see what varieties they have, because I think there's like an Electrode and a Voltorb that are grass type, or at least made of wood. Yeah. Along with others that I'd like to experience. So yeah, regional ones, while I understand the lore behind it, I'd like them to show up, I guess, more regularly. And then an aspect just that I, for some reason, have never really truly connected with is the other evolution forms that they add to the games. And what I mean by that is like the, for lack of a better term, gimmick evolutions. So in X and Y, you had your Mega Evolve Pokemon. So you had your little bracelet or whatever the hell, and you find a little gemstone, and if you equip that gemstone, the appropriate one, to your Pokemon, you can Mega Evolve them in the fight. Granted, some of those Mega Evolved forms look very, very cool, and I think that was probably the mechanic I wish they kept along, but they only did it one gen. Mega Evolved, didn't really use it a lot. Then you had in Sword and Shield, you had, what was it, Dynamaxing your Pokemon? Mm-hmm. I rarely used that. And then Scarlet and Violet, you had the Terraform, or Terraform? Terrastalize, thank you. Terraform's the ground thing. And for me, it just, I don't know, I've never used them a lot. It just, to me, seemed like, maybe with just the Dynamax especially, it felt like, not easy mode, but like, okay, I won. Like, just kind of turning the tables in your favor too much. And maybe that was just how I was looking at it, or how I felt it was, and maybe it wasn't that way. The Terra types is more just like throwing a curveball of like, oh, this Pokemon you thought was weak to this type actually isn't. It's the same. So it was like,
call an ambulance, but not for me.
Right. It didn't, I don't know, it didn't feel like anything special there. It just felt like, we can't think of anything new, let's just the randomness of the mechanics. So I don't know, if people enjoyed them, great, good for those people. Just for me personally, it was just never, it didn't feel like an additive. It just felt like something that was kind of shoehorned in there. But overall, my experience with Pokemon, if you didn't pick up on it, has been very good. Going back to the older style with Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl has been a mixed bag. I am enjoying playing it, but at times it just does feel, I don't know, it's not like other games where you're like, you want that, you have that feeling of I want to progress the story. For some reason in this gen, it feels like I'm doing a lot of back and forth between towns that doesn't feel like a streamlined point-to-point story as the other ones have. Granted, with Scarlet and Violet, that was also very much the same way, where they didn't give you much direction. They gave you points of like interest, but they were just like, go. And you could go to anywhere you wanted to, even though maybe your Pokemon wouldn't be leveled up to the appropriate point for that fight. This one, for some reason, with the town layout, it feels like, okay, you're going here, but you need to go to 3 towns to the right, to then go back here, to then go to this town that's directly next to us, to go to here, to go to there. It doesn't feel like it flows very well. And maybe that's a problem with me, where I get sidetracked and it doesn't keep enticing me to move forward. I will say they're not Safari Zone, but they're underground. I do find that very appealing, of exploring in there, trying to find some more rare Pokemon in there. And that's how you find the fossils with the excavation. There we go. That is fun, and that does distract me quite a bit going there. But it's interesting. I wish there was a little bit more variety of the Pokemon you ran into. Hopefully that'll change maybe once the National Dex is unlocked. Maybe we'll get some more, but that is post-game stuff, so it's still a little yeah. But who am I to say? You know, Pokemon Company, Game Freak, they've made their money, and they will continue making their money. They don't need me in there. But yeah, just a little bit more of an in-depth look with my history with the Pokemon games. Been enjoying playing them again. Looking forward to more, like I said, of the DLC, or seeing how they continue to build and evolve these games, and what they add to it. Time will tell. And yeah, I kind of wish there was an easier way to play the older ones. I think the DS had on their eShop, you could play, you know, red, blue, yellow, silver, gold in their original iterations. I think they're still there. I don't know if the Switch has that capability. I don't think they do. But similar to, like I mentioned with Sun and Moon, kind of missing out on that. I think I still have my 3DS, but if there was a way that I could play it just on the Switch, that'd be very nice and very convenient. But it's Nintendo. The convenience factor isn't always on their side. Who knows? But this has been another episode of the Wait, What Are We Talking About podcast. My name is Bret, aka Enigma9011. And I appreciate you guys hanging out today. If you guys want to catch the show live, you can go over to twitch.tv/Enigma9011, usually every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern. You join the chat like Papa Griff, Rainbow, and Lady did today. Join in on the conversation, have some fun with us. We'd love to have you. But if you can't catch it live, that's A-OK. Go over to YouTube and SoundCloud the very next week, where it's broken out topic by topic and put as one big video, an MP3 for your amusement. Did I just shout out SoundCloud? I sure did. You can get it on any podcast service you're listening to. It's falling apart. Go over there next Friday. You can check it out. And last but not least, any way you can support the show, like, review, share it with a friend. It means the world to us. Helps the channel grow, helps the show grow, and makes me feel all warm and fuzzy. So yeah, you can do that. Appreciate you guys hanging out this week, joining in on all the fun. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And we'll catch you guys on the next one. Take care.